So we can do introductions. I'm Matt Clark with Cohn Clark. Why don't we just go down the line?
Okay. I'm Rachel Morantos. I'm Arnold's middle daughter.
I'm Marissa Sullivan. I'm his baby, his favorite.
Oh. I'm Anna Escobedo. I'm his oldest daughter.
Juan Garza, attorney here at Cohn Clark.
And Juan can handle any questions in Spanish.
What's that?
So we can just do a quick introduction. You know, we're obviously here today. I think everybody knows why. There was a tragic event at the Christmas Parade last Thursday. A man by the name of Alan Booth was driving a pickup truck, a white pickup truck. When it appears, based on some witness statements, he was frustrated. He had been blocked in an alleyway and couldn't get out, apparently, and decided that he would take matters into his own hands, back out at a high speed, ended up on the sidewalk on the other side of the street, and seriously injured 3 people. I don't know that the full extent of these injuries have been reported. The family is here today. They can comment on the extent of Arnold Rios' injuries, but these are life-changing, potentially could have been life-ending type of injuries. My office filed suit against Alan Booth yesterday. So we're here to answer any questions you may have.
For yourself, do you know if the driver was drinking at an establishment in downtown, and if he was, do you think that that business or establishment is responsible?
So these are both good questions. Number one, we don't know yet, right? We're waiting on law enforcement to complete their investigation. Of course, we'll do our own independent investigation. There are a lot of witnesses, right? And so we're already in the process of taking witness statements. And one of the things we'd like to know is, yes, where was this defendant? Where was Alan Booth in the hours that preceded the incident itself, right? The second part of your question is, can you then sue an establishment for over-serving somebody? Well, the answer is yes, you can, but you have to prove that they were in fact over-served and that the establishment knew that they were over-served, okay? And so there's a lot that's left to be done to draw those conclusions. We just don't know yet. That's something that we will learn in due time.
Would you mind moving the microphone a little bit closer to you so we can pick up okay?
Which one was it?
All of them.
All of them?
Had any previous
Sorry.
incidents?
It's held down by this thing. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's our attempt to be festive.
It's beautiful.
You can blame George.
Can you repeat, who is the lawsuit against and what are you alleging?
So right now the lawsuit is only against Alan Booth, right? We're alleging claims for both a motor vehicle cause of action, so he was drunk while driving, punitive damages or exemplary damages based on the fact that he was drunk while driving, right? We're also making claims for loss of consortium. I think an important component of this case is Arnold Rios is 77 years old, okay? Arnold Rios, and I encourage you to talk to his daughters, but Arnold is a Vietnam veteran. He received a Purple Heart. He spent an entire career with the Los Angeles Police Department, reaching the rank of detective. He then moved to the Kern County area, where he went back into public service, working for the Public Defender's Office. He's since been enjoying retirement, but while enjoying retirement, and this is what's important, he's really become the caretaker for his spouse, okay? And that's a problem now because he can't do it. He's suffered significant injuries, including a bleed on his brain. And so whether or not he's going to be able to recover to the extent that he can go back and continue to care for his wife, we don't know yet. We're hoping he can, but we don't know yet.
What about public agencies, public entities of any sort?
Obviously, we're going to look at that, right? So at this point, we don't know, okay? One of the questions that I have is, were reasonable measures taken to barricade the parade route, right? This is not a one-off. This has happened in other communities, right? I mean, one that comes to mind was in Wisconsin last year. There was a similar event. And so we don't want to say you know, you can't have a good time, you cannot have fun events in our community, right? But I read Mayor Goh's statement, and Mayor Goh says, well, I have full faith and trust in our law enforcement to protect us. I mean, that's a carefully orchestrated statement from a mayor who provides carefully orchestrated statements in general. My concern with that is, well, we just had an incident last Thursday where law enforcement was unable to protect the public, right? And I think we see that every night. You guys report on it every single night. Instances of drunk driving, impaired driving, distracted driving, violent crime, okay? And so to answer your question, John, yeah, we're going to look at it. I don't know yet. It just depends on what our investigation ultimately reveals.
So are you saying the city was negligent?
No, I'm not saying that yet, Jose. No, I don't know, right? And first of all, you can't sue the city just because it's negligent. I mean, we're going to get into the legal weeds, and I'm happy to do that if you like, but you can't sue a public entity simply because that public entity is negligent, okay? You have to actually find a government code violation and sue them based upon that government code violation. Now, there's what we call catch-all provisions, that if a government employee within their discretion made a decision that ultimately was negligent, okay, then you may be able to make a claim based upon that employee's negligence. But we are a long way from determining whether or not that actually applies in this case.
And what are you seeking from this suit?
Well, right now, we're seeking monetary damages from Alan Booth, including punitive damages, damages to punish him, right, to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I think we all forget sometimes that we have two justice systems, right? We have a civil justice system and a criminal justice system. Within the criminal justice system, I fully expect our district attorney to prosecute Alan Booth to the fullest extent of the law and seek whatever maximum sentence that the district attorney's office can seek, okay? That's good. It gets him off the road, but that does nothing to help with medical bills, expenses, the types of things that a family is faced with after suffering a tragedy like this. And so the only way to recover for something like that is by way of a civil lawsuit.
Now,
Mike,
there's
you
a lot
also-
of word.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of word around town saying that Booth was a frequent drunk, and that's just from what I've seen throughout social media. Could that also play a part into this as well?
Well, first of all, I deal in facts, not words around town, okay? And so we need to know with some degree of certainty that there's truth to that. I don't know, right? I don't know Alan Booth.
Will that be looked into?
Of course it will, right? Now, whether or not he had a history of drinking to excess, right? Whether or not that has an impact on this case, frankly, it doesn't, right? If you're out drinking, it doesn't matter if it's the very first time you're drinking or the 100th time you're drinking. If you're out drinking and you're impaired and you get behind the wheel of a vehicle and you cause an accident or you injure somebody, you should be prosecuted the same.
I'd like to follow up on that. Will you be looking into the establishment where he was drinking and possibly going to suing those establishments for over-serving him?
Well, you just said it. You have to prove that the establishment overserved and knew that they were overserving him, okay? It's very difficult to prove. It's one of the things we'll look at. I just don't know yet. I don't know factually if he was drinking at a downtown establishment or not. You know, that's all things that are left to be discovered. And by the way, things that we can discover after filing a civil lawsuit and having the power of the court to send subpoenas and other discovery requests.
There's been rumors, obviously, that people saw Booth before he was able to get into his vehicle, that he was drunk, and reported it to police. Is this something that you guys are investigating as well, and have you seen these reports as well?
Yep, absolutely. We've seen the reports. We've heard that from multiple people. We've heard that he was looking for a way to get out of the alley as early as 4:30 the afternoon of the parade. We do understand that there may have been a law enforcement contact. We don't have that confirmed. You know, I would ask that the Bakersfield Police Department review that, and I would ask them that if, in fact, there was a contact with him, and it was known that you've got an inebriated man trying to leave an area right near the parade in a vehicle, that if, in fact, they knew that and they still allowed him to leave without arresting him first, that there be some investigation as to why that occurred.
If police did try to look for him but just were unable to find him before he had gotten to his vehicle, would that still be considered negligence on the city's part?
No, that would not be, right.
one of the things I asked the Bakersfield Police Department is if a field sobriety test was taken at the time of the arrest. They said no. Is that something that can also impact the case as well?
Well, so understand that, again, my understanding is that he was injured as well, okay? And so they may not have been able to conduct a regular field sobriety test due to the extent of his injuries. I don't know, okay? But I've had plenty of DUI cases where there was no field sobriety test, but there was a blood draw subsequent to the arrest, and the blood draw was able to conclusively establish that the person was above the legal limit of .08.
I noticed this morning that the court website still didn't list an arraignment or any hearings coming up. Is that unusual, and can you speculate as to why that might be?
No, I'm not going to speculate. I don't know, right? It's up to law enforcement to make a referral to Bakersfield, to the district attorney's office. It's up to the district attorney's office to file the criminal complaint. At that point, there would be an arraignment. I really can't comment on why that hasn't happened yet. What I will say is that these women, as well as their mother, as well as their father, are disappointed that Arnold Rios, as well as 2 other victims, are still in the hospital, while as far as we know, Mr. Booth is out free.
Do you have a figure, a monetary figure in your mind that you're suing for?
Yeah, we get asked that all the time, and the answer is no, I do not, right? What I would tell you is this. Arnold Booth neither has enough insurance nor enough money personally to cover the damages in this case. So whatever the amount is becomes somewhat irrelevant because the damages so greatly exceed whatever he's going to have available.
Do we know anything about him? Is he retired? Or,
I don't know. He was a real estate broker at Piers, based on what we've learned. I don't know if he was retired or not. That's the kind of industry, it's a bit like my industry. You can do that until the day you pass. It's not a labor-intensive job. And so I have no idea.
Do you know, does he have family here? Have they been in contact with you?
We have heard nothing from him or his family.
You mentioned that he was a caretaker for his wife. Can you tell us more about that and how that plays into the case?
Do you mind if I let them address that issue, John? Yeah. Can I move the microphones? Yeah. Musical microphones.
Yeah.
What was the question? Just how?
Caretaker,
Right.
and what is the condition of I guess, your mother, and how does that play into this case?
Yeah, he cares for her. She has some memory issues. We're not going to go into detail about the condition, but he does care for her. She's currently staying with me. She cannot be left alone. He just took very good care of her, and they lived in Tehachapi, and so she can't be staying in Tehachapi. We live in Bakersfield, and so she cannot be up there alone.
They have a large piece of land that they would manage themselves, and he can't do that now. So,
As for you 3, how are you all doing? How did you find out about everything? And just, how are you doing?
Devastated? Yeah, we're very devastated. We are obviously very thankful. God's been answering our prayers up to here. We're thankful he's alive. His surgeries have gone well, but he's not in a mental condition that he was before. And anybody who knew him before knew his giant personality. And we're just praying that comes back.
Has he been able to make any kind of contact, or has he had any kind of understanding of what's going on?
Yes, he comes and goes.
Have you been able to talk to him at all? Have you been able to communicate with him? And if so, what did you tell him, and what's been his response?
We talk with him, just try to see, how oriented he is. Occasionally he can remember what happened.
Our dad really is such a fighter, and it's been kind of off and on. Some days are better than others. Since the accident, he has been able to recall what happened, and he's slowly recovering. He had a fracture in his skull, and his brain was bleeding. Since then, the bleeding has stopped, but it's kind of just hit or miss.
Definitely affected his cognition.
Mhm.
So he remembers in full detail sometimes, and then sometimes he's not there at all.
Has he been asking for your money?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We've been at his bedside
every
since
day.
the minute it happened. One of us is always there.
Is he here or in Los Angeles?
He's here.
You mentioned that he does remember the night that happened. What does he remember? What has he told you?
He had told me at one point when his memory was clear, he had said, yeah, I do remember. I remember being hit. I remember it hurt. I remember falling. And
He was there to watch her daughter.
yeah,
and
he
she
remembers
danced.
he had pushed my mom out of the way because he said he remembers hearing some man. And that's really all he said. And then after that, he says, I think after that, I was just laying on the ground.
How did that make you feel hearing that?
I mean, terrible. It's horrific to
It's horrific, yeah.
I really have to. I can't visualize it too much. It's too horrific.
You mentioned your daughter was at the parade. Were you there as well?
We were on our way. She was dancing in the parade. She was there dancing with her Dance Nation company. He was there to watch her. He always is there to support her anytime. All of his 9 grandchildren, he's at every one of their events.
Yeah.
Every single recital, parade, concert, baseball game, everything. He's there at all of them.
The parade continued that night. A lot of
Mhm.
people left, but they continued the parade. How does that make you feel? What did
It-
you think during that time?
Yeah, it's very disappointing.
Very disappointing.
It's horrible, and they didn't mention him once.
I think
They didn't mention any of the victims once. I
It's more
just
of an
I think
inconvenience.
the
Yeah.
lack of
How
acknowledgement
serious
is
it
just
was.
really, it's been really disappointing and sad that wasn't even acknowledged. And they were able to continue on, but I mean, my dad is still in ICU, and so are the other 2 victims. And just the lack of acknowledgement is just horrific, in my opinion.
What have the doctors told you?
As far as their condition? or-
Yeah, as far as your dad.
It's a waiting game. They don't know for sure anything.
And they say with his age, the healing process does take longer, so that's something to also consider. And
Yeah.
we're just keeping a really close eye on him.
You mentioned that, in the moment, he pushed your mom out of the way simply because he heard, something coming, knowing, you mentioned, he's a fighter, knowing that
Oh, yeah.
his immediate instinct was,
Yep.
was to care for your mom. How does that make you feel?
it's just my dad. He's a hero. He is incredibly heroic in every way, not just a heroic to our family. He's an actual hero. He's a war hero. In every way he's a hero, and all he cares about is other people.
What is your message to Booth?
I can't.
This
Maybe going
these
on
are
to-
lives. These are human lives. If you're gonna drink, don't drive. Like you can take away someone's life like that, and
And
for what? Your own
many,
selfishness.
Many lives are devastated just
Right.
because of
And
his
it's not
selfish
just these 3
choices.
victims; it's their families.
You mentioned that your dad was not acknowledged. Has anybody from the city or the parade organizers reached out to you in any way, shape, or form?
No, not at all. No, we're getting more love and feedback from establishments where he used to eat. He's got these people from Fuego's Tacos, like, oh man, that guy, everybody
We
loves
know
him.
with his
Everybody.
episode there even.
These people who know him, those are the people reaching out to us.
Well, what do you make of the fact that neither Mayor Go or Understand or anybody else from the parade organizers has reached out to you, or I don't know about the other 2, to, just offer condolences or anything at all like that?
I don't think that it's their priority.
It's very
I don't think that
insensitive.
it's even acknowledged.
Obviously, there's been a lot of media coverage of this since it happened. Was it difficult for you to want to decide? Obviously, it's a difficult time. Privacy is a question. Was it difficult for you guys to decide to want to make this more of a public scenario?
I don't mind talking about my dad. I could talk about him all day, and anybody who knows him, they love to talk about him. He has an incredible life. I will talk about him all day. So no, I don't. If I get a chance to go anywhere and talk about my dad, that's what I would do it.
You mentioned you were on your way to the parade. How did you find out about what had happened? And how did you find out it was your father?
There was a nurse
bystander
there
who
who
called me.
that witnessed it, and she was amazing. And she assessed my dad, and she assessed my mom, and she stayed with my mom all the way until we got to the hospital. So she kind of walked us through this. She was a bystander. She got my dad's phone and called all of us, and very calmly gave us this information. And we're still in contact with her.
I was just
very
asked
grateful.
if you're still in contact.
Mhm.
I mean, what is,
Yeah.
I mean, your message to her, she jumped in there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was actually there that night and was able to speak with some who had also jumped in as well and just said it was no big deal. They saw what happened and wanted to help.
We just thank her. God put her there, and
Yeah,
she
it's
was
a
also
blessing.
very consoling to my mom. She drove her to the hospital, so we're so thankful for her.
What would you like to see happen to Booth?
To be punished for as he deserves.
I mean, it's a DUI with major injuries, so the penalty might be a year. I don't know what the law, but it might be a year in jail. Is that good enough?
Can I comment on that real
Sure.
quick? I mean, one of the elements that's really important is whether or not he's got any prior DUI convictions, okay? I don't know, right? I only have access to our local jurisdiction, so I don't know if he's got DUI convictions elsewhere. That's a major component in what can ultimately occur by way of sentencing. It also depends on how the DA charges it, whether or not sentences are concurrent or not, right? And so we just don't know, right, on the sentencing. But as a law firm that's had way too many of these cases, something needs to change, right? Something needs to change to prevent or further discourage this kind of conduct, because it's happening way too often in our community. We are the worst of the worst in Kern County. We are the worst county in the state when it comes to DUI accidents, DUI deaths, and DUI arrests. We are as bad as it gets, and it's an embarrassment, and something needs to change. And I've been here advocating for that change for a decade, right? Our work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all of the cases we've handled, we have advocated for change, and it hasn't happened. So now I'm left with, we need to add more teeth to the law. The sentence for these types of things needs to be greater, and I call on our state representatives. It is time to make a change, right? You've got to make a change. You've got to add some teeth to the law. Going away for 1 year for something like this, that's laughable in my opinion, and it's an embarrassment to our state.
Do you have any stats or any numbers?
Stats or numbers? Well, I'll tell you this, there's 4,000 DUI arrests in our county every year. Compared to the country, there is one county in the United States where you are more likely to get killed by a drunk driver than Kern County. One. That's it. That's a terrible, terrible, laughable statistic.
You mentioned a little while ago that the suspect does not have the means to pay for any of this. That being the case, what do you hope to accomplish by suing him monetarily?
Well, making sure that he feels the pain of what he's done, number one, right? If he were to go to prison and get out in his lifetime, I want to make sure that there's a punitive damages judgment that hangs over his head the rest of his life, all right? And that's important. I mean, again, this is getting into the legal weeds a bit, but why is that punitive damages judgment important? Because he can bankruptcy away any other type of judgment. But punitive damages, you cannot bankrupt away. So getting that punitive damages judgment and hanging that over his head the rest of his life becomes a critical priority.
So it'll always be there.
It'll always be there, right? If he wins the lottery, if he comes into family money, if he sells property, right, then that money doesn't go to him.
Ladies, we've asked, if you have any message for Booth after what happened, but, after just hearing just how much of a problem this is consistently in our community, it's much bigger than just the one incident. What would be your message to the public and to the community, anyone out there that's watching this?
I would say be responsible. I mean, there's Ubers. There's so many ways that people do not need to be drinking and driving. Just think about other people. Think about us.
Think about your own family
humanize
members.
the victims. Just like there's so many other options.
There was mention of a surgery. Can you tell us about the surgeries, how they've gone, how many of them, and maybe his condition? Get a little more specific. Can you do that?
Sure, I can, yeah. So he had fractures in both legs, toes were amputated, and then he had his skull fracture. So there was one surgery. We're hoping that's the only one he'll need. He's still in critical condition, but he seems to be healing. So we're just praying that he gets there.
You said both legs were amputated?
No, toes.
Toes.
Sorry, would you mind talking towards
I'm
the
fine.
mic
Of
area? I
course.
know you're okay.
Yes, of course. Yes. So right now his legs both are in casts, and yes, so amputations and casts, and then the skull fracture.
You mentioned your parents own a sizable property that they cared for. So is your dad like a very active person?
Very, very active. Yes.
Yeah, he's very active on his property. He's just
His
always out and
pets.
about. He has his pets. He has his grandkids. He's still
grandkids
carrying
all
his
over.
grandkids around on his
He-
back,
He teaches
carrying them
Sunday
around.
school for preschoolers. Him and my mom do.
Yeah,
So
he's down there on the ground.
He's just
playing with the
he's
kids
very
and-
active and very sharp and just so full of personality. Like he's just so radiates joy wherever he goes, and just anyone who's met him. Just,
Have the doctors been able to indicate how this might impact his mobility?
No, not at this point. No.
You mentioned that a lot of the outreach and support has been in the community. Are there any fundraisers going on? Are there people trying to help you all and donate in any way, shape, or form?
We did we did consider doing a GoFundMe to help just with their
Managing
their property. They're not able to care for their property. I'm not sure how long it's going to be before they can get back there and just care for the simple things like, and they're not even their pets. We're trying to find people to feed their pets because they live in Tehachapi. We're here. Our priority is our parents. So yeah, we do have a GoFundMe. A few others have reached out saying they were going to do fundraisers. I think Fuego's Tacos was one of his favorites. He always went there with my son. I haven't heard more than that. Just
Obviously, there were the two other victims also. We've spoken to their family and they mentioned, seeing you guys at the hospital. Have you guys kind of been in contact with them at all? Are you, kind of supporting each other all throughout this?
we were there with them that night in the emergency room, and we all just were just really in the emergency room, all like kind of with the families, just hugging them and
at
praying.
the bedside, we saw
They were
family
next
members
to
and
us,
stuff.
I kind of just seeing them and passing in the hospital, kind of checking in
Not
on each
related,
other.
right? Not related.
No.
no.
What can you tell us about your dad's role as a former volunteer with the United Farm Workers?
He taught English classes. His students loved him. He would bring lottery tickets to encourage them to play games, and he had great success with that. So it's one thing he really loved to do was teach.
He taught English classes for the UFW or
Yes.
what? In Tehachapi or what?
No, that was I think that was here in town, yeah, or maybe in Moscow. Was it?
He's in
Yeah.
Moscow.
He was teaching in Moscow. That was several years ago.
Can you share the story behind the Purple Heart?
He has two.
Two, actually.
Yes.
Oh, he's got so many Vietnam War stories. He actually talks to all of our my sister and I are teachers. He comes and talks to our students in our classes. He's taught at his other grandkids' schools. Just there's so many stories. I don't know the specifics of it. It's just hard to think of right now.
But were these two Purple Hearts for the Vietnam War?
From
Yes.
Vietnam.
Yes.
Since we did bring up then the two other victims, and I wonder, and maybe this is a question for the attorneys here, do we have any information about the condition or the identities of the two other victims in this case?
Well, I think that their identities have been reported, is my understanding. I have no other information other than what's been reported.
And do we know definitively where is Mr. Booth? Is he in a hospital? Is he recovering at home? Do we have anything?
I don't know.
But he did get some medical care. Do we?
My understanding is he received medical care that evening. I don't know if he was discharged or not. What I do know, John, is that he hasn't been arraigned yet. And if he hasn't been arraigned, there hasn't been a bail hearing, which means he's out.
He's not necessarily out of the hospital, but out of custody.
Correct, out of custody. Right. He is not, to my knowledge, as of the start of this conference this morning, he was not in custody.
Would an apology from Booth make any difference?
No. No. It's too devastating. He's just caused so much damage. I don't think
I
words.
think actions speak louder than words.
What would those actions be?
Just being irresponsible, putting people at risk.
Yeah, that's a funny question. I have never had a case with a drunk driver where they did apologize. Ever. I've probably had 200 of those cases throughout my career, and I can't think of a single instance where there was an apology.
Can we talk to Juan in español?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
thank you all.